Hare Krishna. It's coming there, but I can't hear. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Govinda, Radhe. Jaya Radha Govinda, Radhe. जय गौरानिताय 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 जय गौरानिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल गौर हरि बोल जो विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद् डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणार विंद भक्त वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की is confounder Acharya, Bibit founder Acharya, savior of the whole world, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र शतश्री श्रीमद् डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे all glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतस्य सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः कृष्णे सुधामुपगते धर्मज्ञानादिभिः सह कलौ नष्टदृशाम् एषः पुराणार्को धुनोदितः Hare Krishna. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, text number 23. Chapter 9 and text number 23. Yeah. एषा प्रपन्ना एष प्रपन्नवरदो रसयात्मशक्त्या एष प्रपन्नवरदो रसयात्मशक्त्या यद्यत् करिष्यति गृहीत गुणावतार तस्मिन् स्वविक्रममिदं सृजतोऽपि चेतो युञ्जीत कर्मशमलं च यथा विजय्याम् एष प्रपन्नवरदो रमयात्मशक्त्या यद्यत् करिष्यति गृहीत गुणावतार तस्मिन् स्वविक्रममिदं सृजतोऽपि चेतो युञ्जीत कर्मशमलं च यथा विजय्याम् एष प्रपन्नवरदो रमयात्मशक्त्या यद्यत् करिष्यति गृहीत गुणावतार Tasmin svavikramamidam sijato picheto. Yunjita karma shamalam chayatha vijayam. Esha prapanna varado ramayatmya shaktya. Yad yad karishyati vikramimitam sijato picheto. Unjita karma shamalam chayatha vijayam. Esha prapanna varado ramayatmya shaktya. Yad yad karishyati grihita gunavatara. Sijato picheto. Yunjita karma shamalam jayatha vijayam. Esha prapanna varado ramayatmya shaktya. Mataji, Esha, this prapanna, one who is surrendered, varadaha, benefactor, Ramaya, enjoying always with the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi. Atma Shaktya, with his internal potency. Yat yat, whatever. Karishyati, he may act. Grihita, accepting. Guna avataraha, incarnation of the mode of goodness. Tasmin, unto him. Swamikramam, with omnipotency. Idam, this cosmic manifestation. Srijataha, creating. Api, in spite of. Chetaha, heart. Yunjita, be engaged. Karma, work. Shamalam, material affection. Cha, also. Yatha, as much as. Vijayam, I can give up. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation: the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, is always the benefactor of the surrendered souls. His activities are always enacted through his internal potency, Rama, or the goddess of fortune. I pray only to engage in his service in the creation of the material world, and I pray that I not be materially affected by my works, for thus I may be able to give up the false prestige of being the creator. Purport: in the matter of material creation, maintenance, and destruction, there are three incarnations of the material modes of nature: Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara. But the Lord's incarnation as Vishnu in his internal potency is the supreme energy for the total activities. Brahma, who is only an assistant in the modes of creation, wanted to remain in his actual position as an instrument of the Lord instead of becoming puffed up by the false prestige of thinking himself the creator. That is the way of becoming dear to the Supreme Lord and receiving his benediction. Foolish men want to take credit for all creations made by them, but intelligent persons know very well that not a blade of grass can move without the will of the Lord. Thus, all the credit for wonderful creations must go to him. By spiritual consciousness only can one be free from the contamination of material affection and receive the benedictions offered by the Lord. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Utapadakamlam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratushe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kanta Namoste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. We welcome you to our morning Bhagavatam class. Before we begin, let us just read the translation once again. Translation: the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is always the benefactor of the surrendered souls. His activities are always enacted through his internal potency, Rama, or the goddess of fortune. I pray only to engage in his service in the creation of the material world. And I pray that I not be materially affected by my works, for thus I may be able to give up the false prestige of being the creator. So once many scientists across the globe, they had gathered in a conference, in a roundtable conference. So in this roundtable conference, many of the scientists, they decided to appoint 2 representatives who would go to God and tell him that he is no more required. Because we already have building skyscrapers, we can purify water on our own. We have flights to travel from one continent to another. We have all the facilities required, which we need. So we no more need God. And that was their conclusion in the meeting. So now the 2 people appointed by the conference, in the conference, to be representatives, to be the spokesperson in front of God, they decided to go to God. And when they met God, they said, "My dear God, we are grateful to you and thankful that till date you have been providing so many of our needs. But as of now, we are self-sufficient. We can handle everything on our own. So thank you very much." And they wanted to leave. But God, by nature, being so compassionate, he said, "Before you take such measures, let's have a competition. In this competition, let us see if you win, I will not disturb you. But if I win, then it's clear you need my help." So the competition, the first level of the competition was to create another planet like Earth. So out of nowhere, God just manifested another Earth planet. Scientists, they were also pretty confident. They felt that even we can create an Earth. So one of the scientists immediately bowed down and grabbed a palmful of sand to begin the creation. Immediately God said no. You have to get your own sand. So similarly, in this world, we also create, we are doing so many things. Like the modern man has established communication. So you can call from sitting in America, you can call India, you can call many other places across the globe. Or sitting in one place, you can get news of what is happening in other countries, right? So, or we can travel from one place to another, or we can, if we don't have fresh grass, we have artificial grass. If we don't have rain, we have acid rain, not acid rain, but the artificial rain, right? So the modern man has made so many facilities to replace or substitute what God is giving. So sometimes we see mango is only available in certain seasons, mostly in the summer season, right? But we see now we have such mangoes where you can inject chemicals and you can even get it in winter season. Or you have many trees. Today, earlier, if you need palm trees, you have to wait because it takes time for palm trees to grow. But today, because of different artificial engineering, you get fake palm trees, which can actually, people think they can substitute original palm trees. So in this way, man has put all his brain, all his energy, all his sweat and toil in trying to replace what God is giving. Why? Because they want to become the doers. So they feel foolishly that actually I don't need anything from God because I am self-sufficient. Like these poor funded scientists, funded in knowledge, poor funded in knowledge. Because they're not knowledgeable, they cannot see what God is giving and how much, and they cannot be grateful to God. So I have a question for all of you. Sometimes we see that being grateful is an important quality. And one of the speakers was asking this question: how is being grateful a component of knowledge? It is a component of knowledge. But how is being grateful a component of knowledge? We can take the mic.
My suggestion is that gratefulness is a component of knowledge, because you cannot be grateful unless you have knowledge.
Knowledge of what?
Knowledge that you are getting many things as a present. You don't really put endeavors to get them, but just someone is giving them to you. So you have to appreciate this. You have to
Yes, correct. So first of all, we need to first acknowledge that someone is giving me something, and to remember that he has given me something. So there is remembrance. So you are knowledgeable that he has done something for me. So that's why gratitude is also a component of knowledge. Sometimes gratitude is seen something as part of just an emotion. Rather, it is part of knowledge. So unfortunately, today the scientists think, not just the scientists, the materialistic society think that we don't need God because we are self-capable. But God is always acting from behind. He's actually running everything, and foolish living entities being controlled by the modes of nature think they are the doers. Prakriti kriyamanani gune karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma. They think foolishly that I am the doer. And because they think like that, they consider to be foolish. Yeah, vimudhatma. So on one hand, we see here Brahma is also wanting to create. He wants to start creation, and this entire 9th chapter is his prayers to start creation. Similarly, in our life also, we have sometimes spiritual master instructs, go to this place and start this project, or start preaching here, start farm community here. We have different instructions from spiritual master, from Prabhupada. We have different instructions from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All these instructions are there, and if we have to do something substantial, we need to pray, like Lord Brahma is praying. So sometimes we see what happens is there is a fear of getting entangled. So anyone who is intelligent fears entanglement, right? So we have many examples from the scriptures. Why? Because, for example, you see when Kardama Muni, he wanted a wife, but when he asked for a wife from the Supreme Lord Vishnu, he immediately had planned. He told Swayambhu Manu, when the parents of Devoti came, immediately he said, after I get married, I will take, once I give a child, I will take sannyas. Because the exit plan was already made. Because he doesn't want to get entangled. So anyone in general, anyone who is intelligent, they don't want to get into more trouble. But one who is blind, he gets into more trouble because he doesn't know what is happening. It's in darkness. So similarly, if we have to do something substantial for any society, let alone ISKCON society, we need to take up responsibility. Now, when we take up responsibility, we have to manage devotees. We have to communicate. We have to deal with devotees. We have to put some certain boundaries. So all this, actually, sometimes there's a risk of offending devotees. There's a risk of mind being absorbed in management than Krishna. So there's so many risks involved in taking responsibility for the purpose of increasing our society. So one thing we can see, that if we fear entanglement, but also the management on the other hand is also a necessity. Because if we don't do management, if we don't take up responsibility in the society, how can we grow the society, right? So this is the crux, that intelligent people don't want to get entangled. Example, we have Kardama Muni, or even we have example of King Priyavrata, who was who was being trained by Narada Muni, and he was a brahmachari. It means that he didn't want to get entangled in this world, but he wanted to go to the forest, and he was practicing severe tapasya. But what had happened when King Priyavrata was practicing severe tapasya, that time his brother is King Uttanapada. So Bhagavatam explains both their dynasty. So now when Uttanapada, he was ruling the entire world, he was the king of the world, then his son Dhruva became the king of the world. Gradually all the entire generation is explained, and finally the whole generation ends because they all become pure devotees by grace of Narada. So now the problem comes that there is no king to rule the world. Now Priyavrata, who is the brother of King Uttanapad, he still is there on the planet Earth. But the problem is, he's in the forest doing tapasya under the guidance of Narada. So what happens is, and he's very happy there. Yeah. And but the problem is, we need a king. The whole kingship of the entire world is empty. There's no one to rule the world. So therefore, Swayambhuva Manu tries to approach not king, but Priyavrata, who is doing meditation in the forest, and he tries to urge him to take up the kingship. But now, being a brahmachari and being completely away from any sort of material entanglement, he is very happy in his austerities and devotional service. And Narada is also encouraging him to do so. And they don't listen to Swayambhuva Manu, because this is also the right path. So he's not so much concerned about getting entangled. So then Swayambhuva Manu tries to approach Brahma and gets Brahma to convince Priyavrata. So Brahma is like the GBC. So when Brahma comes, then everyone has to stay silent. So then Brahma says, Priyavrata, whatever you're doing is perfect, but we need a king for this world. Because if there's no king, now one thing is to worry about one's own bhajan, one's own devotional service, but a higher level is to worry about everyone else's devotional service. So we need such a king who is capable of helping others, the praja, to take up a devotional service. And King Priyavrata was very capable. So Brahma said, you are such a capable person, why don't you take up the responsibility? So now Brahma and Swayambhuva Manu on one side, and Narada on the other side. So Narada said, if Brahma is saying, better you do the same thing. He was not against Brahma. He was not cursing Brahma in the heart. He was happy because Brahma is also pure devotee. So now, since Brahma is anyway requesting, Swayambhu Manu is requesting. So he instructed Priyavrata that you become the king of the world and you manage the responsibility of running the world. So we see with the blessings of the superiors, he started to run and manage the world. But we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it narrates how as they proceeded, as King Priyavrata started managing the world, he had a wife now, he had children, he was managing the entire kingdom, he became materialistic. Because by nature, if you are a king of the world, you have surrounded by a lot of management and materialistic people or materialistic atmosphere. So it is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Priyavrata became not so Krishna conscious. And when this happened, gradually we see towards the end of Priyavrata's life, again he becomes a devotee. Again he gets towards the end of his life, he gets the remembrance of Krishna's lotus feet. And then he completely dedicates his life. So basically, this story shows that sometimes responsibility cannot be neglected. Because if we don't take up, now Srila Prabhupada wanted ISKCON society to grow. So there is many ways of growing. Now Prabhupada has instilled 7 points or goals of ISKCON. So the different devotees heading ISKCON in different directions. So some are doing preaching, direct outreach, some are building farm communities, some are boiling the milk, cultivating people, giving training. So there are different directions. But suppose everyone says, I just want to be absorbed in my own devotional service, right? Then the ISKCON society will not grow or expand. Because Srila Prabhupada wanted ISKCON to be a preaching society. So preaching is the essence. That's our main focus. And if no one takes responsibility, how will the ISKCON society expand? So on one hand, we see, till now we have been talking about how intelligent people fear entanglement. And we saw examples of Priyavrata initially. And we saw examples of Kardama Muni or any such saint people. We can get many such examples from the scriptures that they fear entanglement. So they stay away from it. King Bharata, it is said how he left his kingdom, his beautiful wife, children, all opulence, and went to the forest. Why would they go to the forest? Because they wanted to avoid entanglement, any further entanglement. So many examples. But then we see, as devotees, we want to please Krishna also. Right? So intelligent people fear entanglement and but as devotees, we need to please Krishna, Guru and Krishna. So now where do we get the balance? For basically pleasing Guru and Krishna means we have to take up responsibility for their pleasure. We have to follow instructions. So on one hand, you have giving up entanglement and going away and doing one's own bhajan, which is called as bhajanandis, generally, broadly speaking. And taking up responsibilities and preaching and helping others to take up to Krishna consciousness is Goshtanandi, broadly speaking. So there's always a thin line between, or there's always a question of how to balance our own Krishna consciousness and helping others take up to Krishna consciousness, or helping others take up responsibilities in the society. So then what we have to do is have such a balance where we take up the responsibility to give Krishna consciousness, but don't get entangled. Right? Very simple solution, but it requires a lot of care and precautionary measures. Because sometimes, for example, I'm a book distributor, but I'm a brahmachari. So brahmachari book distributor means he cannot go and, now if suppose there's Mataji walking in the street, can I go and say, oh, you look so beautiful, do you want a book? That does not fit a brahmachari. So because he's a brahmachari, he cannot say such things. He can of course say, are you interested in yoga and meditation? We have nice books, we have nice programs, you can come to the temple. These things he can tell, or tell to the Matajis. Or best for brahmachari book distributors, preach to men. Even Mataji is secondary. If you don't get any Prabhus or books are not going, then it's fine. Because generally Matajis take more books, generally seen in the West. So we avoid, at least there are so many people who are not even wearing proper clothes. So brahmacharis can completely avoid, right? So that is the managing our bhajananandi aspect, where our minds don't get disturbed. Whereas giving out books, you can give out to men or properly clothed women or women with character. So you can give books to them. That is maintaining our Goshanandi aspect. Now one may say, Prabhu, but isn't it so selfish that you don't give to those poor souls who are, dressing very minimal and walking around the streets? Don't you think it's lack of compassion? No, it's not lack of compassion, because compassion starts with oneself also. If we don't take care of our Bhajanandi aspect, see, Bhajanandi aspect means several things. Our chanting of Hare Krishna mantra in the morning, our daily hearing kota, our following Guru's instruction, basically all our chanting, hearing and chanting and remembering. These three come under Bhajanandi aspect. So if we don't take care of this thing, how much can we really give out? Right? So if we are not, now if we keep talking, or if we keep committing silly mistakes in spiritual life, what is silly mistake? You go to YouTube to watch someone's lecture, and on the side you get recommendation, and you go to some other video and start watching, and finally after 10, you see after 1 hour you are completely in Maya because of first silly mistake. So we cannot afford silly mistakes in spiritual life. So on one hand, we have to give out or take up responsibility in our society, but on the other hand, we have to be so very, very careful that we don't get entangled. And if we can expertly manage this balance, then we can give out the most in our society, in ISKCON society. But if we don't manage this, either we, many people, they just want to go to Vrindavan and sit, which Prabhupada didn't encourage so much. He wanted people to go to holy places to get recharged, right, and come back and serve. So that is always there. But going and sitting in holy places is not so much encouraged. Rather, we have to stay in the city, stay with the devotees, like Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur said, that we want our mathas in middle of the city, so you can do outreach. Whereas if you notice any other mission, they have their temples very far away. Like I know there are some mathas also, like Madhva Matha and Shri Matha. All these temples, they're in complete upstate, or they're somewhere far away in residential areas. You cannot preach from there. But we have our center in the hub of Maya, right? We have downtown Brooklyn Temple, and downtown Manhattan, where, if you see that area, you have a Bhakti center. And so we have our centers right in the middle, because we want to give out. So maintaining this balance of not getting entangled, or maintaining our strong sadhana and giving out, but not at the cost of our Krishna consciousness, that requires intelligence, right? So here also Brahma is very nicely praying to Krishna that it is obvious, if I have to do the sub-creation on your behalf, if I have to take up this great responsibility, it will be known to the whole world. Who created the universe? Brahma created the universe, right? He has created the universe, and we see how intricate the universe is. So many people will start worshipping Brahma instead of Krishna, right? There can be a diversion in worship also. So sometimes we may take up the role of, now suppose, temple president or GBC. We can become preaching leaders, right? And sometimes the followers whom we get out of such an endeavor, they start worshipping us more than even understanding who Prabhupada is. So what Brahma is praying, I pray only to engage in his service, means in his service in the creation of the material world, and I pray that I not be material affected by my work. Means I don't deserve name and fame. I want to assist my spiritual master in expanding the society, but I don't want name and fame. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundari. Like one of my spiritual master was saying, that if you think you're a hero, you need heroine. So sometimes we think we are doers, then we cannot stay our brahmachari. And when I say brahmachari is not just saffron, it's even brahmachari at heart. Then we get that enjoying mentality. In such a unfortunate platform, then we enjoy the position rather serving at that position. So that's why we see if we want to take up responsibilities, we need certain capacities, we need certain adhikar, qualification to take it up. And then Brahma continues, he says, I pray that I not be materially affected by my work. That means I don't want any name and fame. For thus I may be able to give up the false prestige for being the creator. That means his goal is still clear. What is the goal? What is the goal of Brahma? Yeah, to serve Krishna. And he wants to finally go back to Godhead. He doesn't want to just be in the material world, right? But Krishna has to appoint some Brahma. So he has taken it up very brilliantly and he's doing his thing. But he's praying to Krishna to protect his consciousness. So similarly, we want to give out, but just giving out at the cost of Krishna consciousness is simply useless. Sometimes we see even the NGOs, social service, they want to feed the poor, they want to give clothes to the people who don't have clothes, and they want to give charity to the temple. Like in Pune, one person gave charity to Brahmacharya Ashram. He gave a lot of fans in the room, rotating fans. So on the fan, one day he came to the temple to see the fan, because on the fan was his name written, that he has donated this fan. No problem, but only thing is the fan was rotating and he could not see his name. So he asked the person, can you please switch off the fan? He said, but it is so hot, it's in summertime. He said, but my name is not seen. Right? So this is the problem. We want to give charity, but we are more looking for name and fame behind the charity, behind the donation. Sorry? Yeah, this really happened. So this is the problem. So people, even if we want to do something, it's always contaminated by modes of passion and ignorance. That's called, I think, charity in the mode of passion, where we want name and fame. So therefore, if we continuously pray, and that's what Brahma is doing. Just before creating the universe, how many prayers is he uttering? This is already 23rd verse. And if we see, let us see. There are a total of 44, not 44. Then because Lord Vishnu is also speaking towards the end. Okay, so 28 verses or 26, no, 26 Maitreya, 25. So there are totally 25 verses Brahma speaks as a prayer to Lord Vishnu. So even we also have to take up responsibilities. There's no question of not taking up responsibility, because we want the society to grow. We want people to get benefited. But while taking up responsibilities, we have to make sure that our sadhana is strong. That means our 16 rounds in the morning is very strong. That means our hearing program from our spiritual master, from Sri Prabhupada and other devotees, is very strong. Our morning program is strong. Our evening program is strong. When we do all this, then we can take up responsibilities. And we can go on with the responsibility decade after decade. And when you become an acharya in that responsibility, you can pass on the legacy to another person. Right? But if our sadhana itself is weak, then we try to take up a responsibility, then there's a fall down. You cannot manage it. Or some people, because their sadhana is not strong, they're too much worried about being entangled, they don't want to take up any responsibility. That means they don't want to contribute to the society. Right? So in this way, we understand that we want to become an instrument like Brahma. We want to become an instrument like Arjuna became for Krishna. Krishna also wanted. Arjuna was fearful in the beginning of fighting the war. He told Krishna that I don't want to fight the war because my own relatives' kingdom is going to anyway. If I get the kingdom, whom will I enjoy with? He gave 5 reasons because of which he doesn't want to fight. Towards the end, Krishna tried explaining, and later he told Arjuna, this war is already fought. I have already defeated all the people in this battlefield. Now it is up to you if you want to take the credit. And here's Bhagavad Gita 11.33. Let us see. Maybe we can just recite this verse. Yeah. If you have to hear very carefully, because I'm not showing on the screen. You have to repeat. Tasma tamuttishta yasho labhasva jitva shatrun bhungshva rajyam samriddham. Shatru. Samriddham. Maye vaite nihata purvameva nimittamatram bhavasavya sachin. Yeah, what Krishna is saying here, Krishna is telling Arjuna, now you get up and fight because this war is already over. So get up and fight, take the credit, win the glory of fighting the war, and simply become an instrument. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also said, I have so many fruits of love of God, but I only have two hands. You think he cannot expand himself into Mahavishnu and not Mahavishnu, into Virat Rupa and give to everyone? He can do it. But he is passing on mercy to all of us to take up responsibility and give it to others. Like once Srila Prabhupada said, who is greater? I think recently Hansu Prabhu or Ramray Prabhu was saying, different paintings. Someone asked that who is greater, Yashoda or Krishna? And Pandava Prabhu was saying, okay, yeah. So what Prabhupada said, who is greater? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only distributed mercy in the whole of India. Whereas look at me, I have distributed Krishna consciousness across the whole world. So devotees became bewildered. They thought, what is Prabhupada saying? And Prabhupada said, I have done this by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So devotees become greater than the Lord by mercy of the Lord. Right? So similarly, if we connect, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy is going on, it's flowing. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's his prediction that the whole, every town and village in this world will be chanting Hare Krishna mantra will happen because he has said it. Now, to become an instrument is whose choice? Our choice. So if the current is flowing, sometimes in India, what they do in villages, they have these lines of electricity flowing. So some people go directly and connect that to that line to get television working directly without any official permission. But that is not allowed. Whereas in our sampradaya, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy is flowing and it's free for all of us to connect ourselves. How do we connect? By taking responsibility, by becoming an instrument in expanding the mission. And if we can do that, that itself is perfection of life. Even if sometimes taking up responsibility can give a fear of entanglement, if Guru's instruction is there, it's perfect because we see it in the example of Priyavrata. Towards the end of life, Krishna gives. Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, Tesham aham samuddarta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavamina chirat partha maya veshita chetasam. That means towards the end of life, even if we forget Krishna, he can still come and take us to the spiritual world. There are 3 verses where Lord's compassion to living entity is shown. I forget what is it's called Charma Shloka or something like that. One of them is given in Varaha Puran, where Lord Varaha is telling that if my devotee, if he has practiced sincerely throughout his life in trying to serve me, even at the time of death, even if he forgets me at the time of death, I will give him the remembrance or I will take him back to Godhead. Because Krishna remembers every action of ours. So maybe I will stop here. If anyone has any comments or questions, they can ask.
So, Prabhu, can you please just in 2-3 sentences wipe up the main topic of the lecture, the presentation?
Basically, it is answering the question, how to catch fish without getting wet. So we want the fish, but we don't want to fall in the water. So we want the fish also, but we want to remain dry. That is the basic thing. And some points basically are intelligent people fear entanglement, but as devotees, we have to take up responsibilities to serve the mission. So therefore, we need a perfect balance of both. But if there is Guru's order, we don't have to fear so much because we need to have faith in Guru's instruction that he will protect us, Guru and Krishna's instructions. That he will protect us, even if sometimes in the name of responsibility, if our mind deviates a little, we should have full faith that I'm doing it for Krishna's service. That is most important. And if that consciousness is there and we are constantly praying like Brahma is praying, then we can handle the responsibility decade after decade. and do something worthwhile.
Thank you. I want to ask, when we try to take responsibility, do we have to take in consideration our nature, our position, let's say social position or spiritual position, in terms of social orders and spiritual orders? Like, for example, someone is family person, someone is brahmachari. Do we take this in consideration when we take responsibility? Let's say you are speaking generally for this society, for ISKCON society.
Of course, some considerations have to be taken, because some things cannot be done by brahmacharis. Some things are like financial. If you want to become a head of financial department, better if Grihastha handles. It's safer than a brahmachari handling finance. Or you have to head some Mataji preaching. Of course, it should be some Mataji preacher. It cannot be a brahmachari. It cannot be a Prabhu, like that. So such considerations where our responsibility can affect our Krishna consciousness. So we have to be very careful. Otherwise, Prabhupada started the entire movement and he ran the entire movement on his own. So that is possible, depending on our surrender. And even if it comes to question of our nature, yes, so that we can be happy doing that service. But ultimately, if something is Guru's order, we should be that level of surrender. We should be even ready to keep aside our nature and do service, in my humble opinion. Hare Krishna. Is there anything you want to share?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for this lecture. It's something I've definitely been meaning to hear. Been thinking recently, like, oh, my chanting, my reading, my hearing, all these things are not so nice. And we're still going out for Harinam Sankirtan. And sometimes I get bewildered. And I'm thinking, you're mentioning all these things, Prabhu. I'm thinking, oh yes, I must take this up very seriously. Must let this sink deeply into my heart. So also what to do, right? I think that it's very important to go out, to do book distribution. Also at the same time, my sadhana hasn't been keeping up. So what to do, Prabhu?
Then you can compromise on book distribution and do more sadhana.
Do more sadhana.
Yeah. You have to always, of course, protect yourself first.
Yes, Prabhu.
It's like a soldier who he wants to fight. Suppose in example, India-Pakistan war, some Kargil war. He's very much passionate. He wants to protect India, and he goes there with gun without any armor. He's going to be shot in the beginning. What's the use of going there? Better he take some training and then go after some time. He can do something substantial for the country. Unless he's a sniper, that also requires training. Even to hold a gun, you need training. Otherwise, it backfires. Not backfires means it has it's a one motion. What's it called?
Recoil.
What's it called?
Recoil.
Recoil. Okay, so it can sometimes hit the shoulder. People can lose their shoulder sometimes if they don't know how to handle the weapon. So better to get trained and do it. Of course, at our stage, we can always do something. Not that we have to completely resort to staying in the temple. We are capable, but if you want to, so at our stage, we have certain capacities which we can fulfill. So we can keep doing those services. Like, so you can go for book distribution, but suppose you have to go to book distribution near pubs and where people are hardly dressed properly. So that requires more strength. So, but you can do book distribution where devotees are there. Suppose Harinam Sankirtan is going on, just stay around the area and you can give books. So that's good. But if you want to, increase your level, pick up the game, then you have to increase the training, increase the hearing, everything, and then that if you increase your qualification, you can do more for the society. If you keep your qualification less and try to do more, then it is like there's a ladder to the roof. And this was a diagram which I saw somewhere, a photo. So in this, there were two ladders. One ladder had a step, you call it step, a step every 1 inch. for one person. And the next ladder had one step, a step every, suppose, 3 feet. So now which is easier to climb?
1 inch ladder.
1 inch ladder means where steps are,
Yes.
1 inch difference. Very easy to climb. That means it's easy for us to pick up gradually than to jump. So you jump, there's a high risk of falling down because you may not reach there. That makes sense. So similarly, we have to do that much which is within our capacity. And because since we have the desire to do more, we have to increase our capacity. We can always do unlimited, but have the capacity to do it. This is what I think.
Prabhu, Hare
That
Krishna.
makes sense.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki,
Chai.
Sri Prabhupada ki.
Chai.
Sri Prabhupada ki.
So how many subjects do you observe? How many are you going to do today? Do we have any pact? It's not about qualification. It means you gotta tie some so you distribute some. If you don't have any tie, then you distribute.
You gotta distribute me up. So there's a packet. So it's time to put somebody on.
Yeah, today I don't know about that.